And when we're not hustling, we believe that seeing sex workers as full people outside of our work is an essential step toward humanizing and destigmatizing the industry and those who work within it. Help us to bring you the stories of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit project of the Social Good Fund. Thank you for considering a tax-deductible recurring contribution. All contributions will be received through our fiscal sponsor, the Social Good Fund. You can contribute at nothustling.com.
Put away the lingerie. I wanna know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I'll part the shades, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On our show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the industry. Learn more about Assembly 4 at assemblyfour.com. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. I am very excited to have my friend Xanthe Rhea on today. I have known her for a long time, actually, for probably six or more years. We met when we were both doing organizing with SWAP Pittsburgh, the Sex Worker Outreach Project, and we worked on a few projects together then, but also just became friends. And she was really, really instrumental in helping me and my partner who had cancer 5 years ago, get through a really hard time because she's a trained nurse and I had a small child, and she would come to our house and help us with our kid while I was trying to nurse my partner through cancer. And so I have a special place in my heart for her. But even if she didn't do that, she is a very interesting and neat person, and I think you're going to enjoy the episode. We talk a lot in this episode about the work that she did urban farming. She has a background as a stripper and is now working in in-person sex work, but she also does a lot of farming and went and did a horticultural program, and she talks a lot about that, and we talk about labor issues. So I think you're going to really enjoy this episode, and I want to just dig right into our conversation. Hi, Xanthe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Jessie?
Good. I just saw you a few hours ago.
I know.
Because you are, I love to say this every time I have somebody from Pittsburgh on my show, I'm like, Pittsburgh represent. So you are a Pittsburgh friend.
Yes.
A longtime Pittsburgh friend, actually.
Yeah, we've been through a lot together.
I know.
So many things.
A lot of things.
It's so much time just in and of itself. So
I know.
Doing great.
Yeah. So you are, Xanthe Rhea is a brand new name for you because you are transitioning into full service. And what did you do before that?
Before that, for the last almost 8 years, I've been dancing. stripping, if you will. Doing a little bit of online stuff, but mostly I really like the in-person work and I like
Mhm.
performing. So working on that. I'm also working on doing some feature performing. So aerial silks and hoops and all that kind of stuff. Trying to do that in the strip club, but getting paid to show up rather than
That's
paying to show up.
Yeah, I think most of the people that listen to this show will know this, but just in case there are a few people who don't, what do you mean when you say that?
So right now, I've worked at about 30 clubs around the U.S. I've never done any other countries, but all of them require either the beginning of your shift or by the end of your shift that you pay some sort of nominal fee. I've had them as low as $5. I've had them waived before to be $0, but I've had them as high as $120 just to show up.
$120 to go to work is
Yes.
so outrageous.
And a lot of times it is due at the end of your shift, but sometimes you have to come to work with that $120 before you can
Mhm.
start making money, which is a lot of pressure, you
Yeah,
know?
I also would think that that would be like prohibitive to some people, to a lot of people, probably.
Yeah, I think so. And I even had a conversation the other day where someone I was sitting next to, who she was checking in, talking to my manager, and she had a bunch of ones, and he was like, "You didn't get those from here? Are you working somewhere else?" And I was just so like immediately icked out by that because like what business is that of yours? Like we pay you. Like where else?
Yeah.
Like us?
You're not employees, you're paying to be there.
Yeah.
So
And like you
it's
want us to pay you, so how else can we get that money if we had a bad night? Like,
right.
whew.
Yeah. It's so funny because when I hang out with my escort friends and we go out to dinner, they're like the only people who like show up and put down like $100 bill instead of like cash for dinner. And when I hang out with you, you're like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes. Yes.
It's very funny.
It's such a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the different parts of the industry you're in, how you get paid, and not even just like cash or Venmo or whatever, but like what denominations of cash.
Yes. And like sometimes I'll have like $2 bills that
Really?
yeah. Thing for a while, and it was so funny because like it's like I don't know, strippers will know this. It's like an old man thing. They think they're kind of like being your like I don't know, like surrogate grandpa or something. They're
That's
like,
so funny because I've had my grandfather give me $2 bills before
"Mhm.
and dollar coins.
Oh yeah, yeah, same vibe.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
I got you something so special, and it's a $2 bill, and I'm like, it really isn't as valuable as you are making it sound like it is.
No,
And
it's
so
worth $2.
yes. And I mean, unless if you they're like, "Well, they could be worth more," but you have to sell them to make them worth more money. They
Mm,
don't just automatically like, "Oh, this $2 worth more than $2." You have to sell them, but
yeah.
regardless, I was confused by this. Like, there was a big influx of them. All of a sudden, I was getting, like, a lot of $2 bills, and I was turning them into the bank. I was asking the lady, I was like, "Are you handing out a lot of these all of a sudden?" And she's like, "Yes, I am actually." And I'm like, "Is it to maybe some, like, middle to older age men?" And she's like, "It certainly is." And I'm like, "Well, here we are, full circle."
That's so funny. Is she how did she respond to that?
I think she kinda, like, put it all together. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
in there with, like, stacks of ones for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think initially when you see stacks of money, I think people would be like, "Oh, maybe you're, like, you know, a bartender. Maybe they think you're a drug dealer," but they're, like, all ones.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no other job. There's just no other job. And I just always love too when people are, like, jokingly like, "Oh, it's almost like you're a stripper or something." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's almost like that." That would be crazy, wouldn't it?
Just so much like that.
Yeah, so much like that. So please put that money in my bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is not a show about sex work, but I did want to bring that up because I think there are still like people who don't understand that strippers like have to pay to go to work and how like outrageous that is.
Yeah, no, and I think it is worth bringing up because I think it's, beyond, like, what I'd like the customers to know. I think it is, like, a larger labor issue about, like,
Mhm.
female labor, and as somebody who's done like nursing and waitressing and you
Mhm.
know all these like
A lot
female.
of pink coated jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, like that. And it's such a similar struggle to like the nursing struggle that we're seeing in our city, and like I don't know, man, we gotta all be out there for each other. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So well, actually, and I did want to just highlight for a second that you've been doing a lot of aerial training.
Yes, yeah, that's been so fun. I started dancing, like taking pole lessons, like more officially when I was in New Orleans. I lived there for most of this year. And I think 2 years ago, I started dancing at this studio called Nola Pole. Shout out to Jill. She is amazing, and the studio is amazing, and it's very like sex worker positive, very
Mm,
like gender positive. It's not just like, oh, like blonde housewives dancing for fun,
yeah.
never wanting to be a stripper. It's like those women and everybody else all around that from all spectrums. And because I felt so comfortable in her pole classes, I started doing her aerial classes as well, and I really love it. I have done all the apparatuses. Trapeze was the scariest one, and that's the one I'm spending the most time on right now because it is
Really?
scary. But
Hmm.
it's like even if I couldn't make money on it, like I just love doing it. Like
Yeah.
it's just so fun. Like it's so scary, and like there's like this primal thing that happens to me when I'm like up in the air and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna die. And you have to like undo that thing in your brain where
Mm.
your brain is trying to stop your body from like going upside down. And you're like, no, we're doing it anyway. It's happening and we're not gonna die. It's fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was a speaker last month in Philly at the Philly Fat Con, and it was really, really interesting. The conference was interesting itself, but the keynote speaker to the conference was a Black fat woman named Roz the Diva. And she does a ton. She was a really fun speaker, but her whole thing is she does like fat fitness, but she also is a pole dancer and
Ooh.
does amazing things. She has a big Instagram account that has like a bunch of pictures of her on the pole, Roz the Diva. So shout out to her. I have no idea where she's based. I can't remember, but she was talking a lot about that, but also about like all bodies being able to like do pole and be sexy. And that was really cool.
Oh my gosh, it's so real. It's so real.
Yeah.
Because like I came from like a regular dance background, like not as a euphemism for stripping, but like actually like dance since I was like 3 years old, like doing like jazz and ballet. And it's so like body specific. Like, if you're the smallest, skinniest, tiniest kid,
Hmm.
you get like, oh, they can probably do this flexible thing. And like you get like put to the front of the class. And it's so like very one-sided about like what type of bodies are acceptable and gender. It's like it's all like female
Yeah.
classes. Aerials is just so open, and like people that like you have like no idea like who they like. It's not like, oh, the strongest, tallest, like most stereotypically beautiful woman is the teacher. It's like literally like somebody that looks like your mom could be the teacher, and she's
Yeah.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
she killed
Hmm.
it. Like there's a girl I met in Philly who I think was actually older than my mom at the time. Like she was like 57, and she had just finished like competing and winning in Philly at like these
That's
pole
amazing.
competitions, and like she didn't even start dancing until like 5 years ago, and she's
That's
like
amazing.
having so much fun. Like
Yeah.
it's so beautiful.
I
Because it
love
can
that.
be kind of like gatekeepy, I think, at
Mhm.
times, but when people take that opportunity to like be inclusive. So it's so beautiful.
Do you want to know the best thing that happened at the conference too? I mean, there's cool things that happened, but in regards to this, so Roz was giving this talk and she was showing pictures of herself on the pole and talking about like inclusiveness of all body types. And then somebody raised their hand with a question. And the question was, can you please talk about non-sex workers taking on pole and like what you think about that, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. And she's not a sex worker as far as I know. She doesn't identify as one, and was like, this art came from sex workers, if we don't like attribute it to them, and was very pro sex worker. And then all the sex workers, because there's a lot of sex workers there, actually. It wasn't a sex work conference, but lots of big bodies in sex work. They were just like, yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah.
That sounds beautiful.
Okay. So I wanted to talk to you about urban gardening, because as long as I've known you, you've been like digging stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So can you talk about what your relationship to that is and how you would describe it?
Yeah. So I started like digging in the dirt when I was like a little kid. My mom had a garden, mostly like flowers, but we did do vegetables as well. And it just got me comfortable with all of that. I did some trail building in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that
That's
was fun.
cool.
Yeah, people do get paid for that. I didn't realize, but it is hard work, and you learn so many skills though, and I think that's why they have the high school program is it can kind of like lead to a lot of different careers.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that mostly in Pittsburgh, but they had a traveling crew. I worked on trails in Texas, one in New Jersey, and yeah, I think that was most of the locations. And then I went to herb school in Butler.
What is
That
herb school like? Tell me about that.
I think it's different for everyone, but the one that I went to was like a one weekend a month program where you got like an introduction that was some lecture and then some like hands-on either like plant walks or medicine making. So like
Mm-hmm.
we'd be like hanging up herbs to dry to make tea, or we'd be like pouring alcohol over fresh herbs to make tinctures, and then 6 weeks later pressing that material to get the tincture out of the plant material. And yeah, working a lot outside was a lot of what my program was like, but I'm sure there's all
Yeah.
different types. But did that, and then one of the teachers from my herb school actually has an herb farm about an hour north of Pittsburgh, and I ended up working, volunteering, and then ultimately doing an apprenticeship with her in Butler, and just doing a lot of farm work, like just
Mm-hmm.
down and dirty, like planting stuff. And she was not a big fan of power tools, so we did a lot of like hand tools. So
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, it was intense. It was so intense.
Uh-huh.
Just like shoveling dirt into piles to make rows and to cut out the walkways.
What
Yeah.
was her aversion to power tools? The electricity or?
Yeah, she wanted to avoid like using fossil fuels, I think was her big thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just limiting her environmental impact. But yeah, that's the trade-off, is it becomes way more labor intensive.
Yeah.
It's Western Pennsylvania, so you're on a hill. So,
Yeah.
it was intense. But
So were you guys like digging that out with like shovels and
mm,
yeah?
what I ended up doing was like when I would be going uphill, I would get on my knees and like use the big shovel as if it was a hand shovel and like just try to like keep the shovel as close to my body as I could, because it's very tiring.
Wow.
Especially out in the
Yeah.
middle of the day. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was also like some of the most beautiful times I've spent outside. I did my apprenticeship in 2020, so that we started like our second week of the apprenticeship was like after the shutdown of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all like, good thing this apprenticeship is outside because we
Mm-hmm.
can't be close to each other. And it was a crazy time. My grandpa died that year, and I remember like it was like so many weird feels because I couldn't really be
Mm-hmm.
with him because of COVID. But I was just like standing in this chamomile field with like chamomile up to my knees and probably even higher, and like harvesting chamomile. And I'm like, you know what? Life's not so bad. Like this is
Yeah.
just go out in a chamomile field. And it was like femme folks who were really rad, and they were just like, yeah, if you want to like have your titties out. They didn't use that language.
That's your strip club. Like, yeah.
Exactly. They were like, if you want to do some naked farming, like, whatever you're comfortable with, as long as there's not like, like the non-farm workers around, like do what you want to do. So I'm like harvesting chamomile in my underwear, just like crying and like, it was
Oh.
cool. I'm so grateful for that experience. It was so good.
Yeah. Just like a reconnection to.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. It definitely helped me stay grounded through all of that.
So
Um,
what is the like philosophical like underpinnings of like herbalism?
for me, or like how I interpret it, and I guess it is historical fact as well, but it's like female indigenous, or maybe not indigenous, maybe not be the right word, but like ancient healing,
Yeah.
and even that
Mhm.
might not be the right word, but like it's much closer to the earth and to ourselves as like earth bodies than like
Mm.
Western medicine is today.
Mhm.
Um, and it's actually kind of hard, like code switching between like I got into the herb program right as I took my nursing boards, and code switching between like the philosophy of herbalism and the philosophy of Western medicine was actually really hard for my brain to
Mm.
make the
Mhm.
switch, because it's just such a different way of describing things. Like
Yeah.
the philosophy, because the thing about American herbalism, it's generally a mix of all different regions of
Mm.
herbalism coming together. So like Eastern herbalism, um, so like traditional Chinese medicine, but also stuff that's older than that.
Mhm.
Native American herbalism, and like older European medicine. Like it's a mix of everything. But the thing that I think brings it all together is that like we have the power to heal ourselves. And if
Mm.
we look at like medicine through that framework, it's less about like, oh, like what's wrong with you, more than
Mhm.
like, oh, like what's happening in your body right now, and like how can we use plants to work with that
Mhm.
to help
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I think this is related. It's not about like medicine per se, but I used to work as a doula. And when I worked as a doula inside the hospital, it was so interesting because I felt like the biggest job that we had there was to like stop the like medical interventions because like
Yeah.
once those started, then you were starting to treat things, you were starting to like respond to the effects of the things that you did on this like birthing person instead of like what was actually going on with like their body. So, you things weren't going fast enough. So there was things aren't going fast enough. So now we got to put Pitocin. Well, Pitocin is having these particular sorts of, and even before we get to that, like you're putting a woman down or a person who's in labor on their back and sticking monitors to them. Well, now there's like no gravity and no movement. So the babies are getting stuck. And then they're like, this is going too slow. It's stuck. So now we need to start the Pitocin drip. Well, now they're nauseous. And so now you need, there's like a
Mhm.
million things that start happening. And you're like, actually, none of this had to happen. If you like, she doesn't even need a monitor. There's nothing going on. There's nothing wrong with her. So, like, she's in labor. This is not a medical emergency.
Right.
Like, and that was so interesting because I feel like the Western doctors are very much trained to be like, this is a medical problem. We're gonna solve it with medicine, and then like they're solving their own problems that they created. And
Yes.
then our job was to be like, actually, this person's fine. You don't need to put a monitor on them. Check them every 20 minutes. But before then, can they get up and walk around and do like normal people things?
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, I witnessed 2 births in the hospital, only 1 to full completion, when I was in nursing school, and it was like, yeah, the most one of the most stressful experiences, and I felt for the mom, like, they were just 1 second, they're like, "Oh, it's going too slow," and, like, everyone's getting really anxious, and then someone just starts yelling, and they're like, "Now it's time for this." And the dad's like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "We gotta do this." And they're not even talking to the parents anymore, they're just, like, screaming between each other, and then
Yeah.
3 minutes later, there's, like, a blue C-section baby on the table, and it lives,
Yeah.
great. But,
Yeah.
like, it went from, like, "Oh, this is kinda stressful," to, like, "We're cutting you open," and
Yeah.
very little communication about
Right.
what was gonna happen. Yeah, it was
And
whew.
also very little, like, I remember I've seen many 30 to somewhere probably between 30 and 50 births. But the thing that was like interesting to me was I remember one time there was a doctor And the woman was like she was in very active labor. And so her contractions were really intense and she's having one. And the doctor is asking her questions, like, and she can't respond to them because she's having an out of body experience. And I looked at him, and contractions only last so long. Then there's an off period. So I was like, can you wait? Just like give her a minute. Like, she cannot hear you right now. And he yelled at me because you're not supposed to talk to the doctors because they're like gods, you know? And then my boss was even like, you can try to finesse that, but you can't talk directly to them or tell them what to do. And I was like, this is so bonkers that this is all happening right now. So, because it was just such common sense to me, like, give her a minute, then she'll talk to you. But instead, he's like trying to get her to do something and using that as evidence that, like, she's not.
Right. That's like his assessment. It's like, oh, she's not responsive.
Yeah.
Like, she will be. Like,
like, give her a minute. Like, let this pass, you know? And so it's interesting. What were some of the like challenges for you in that sort of code switching when you were doing those simultaneously?
Yeah. I think just letting go of the Western mindset of like problem solving, and like trying to, like, it almost felt like in Western medicine, like you diagnosed somebody first and then you like went and talked to them, you know, like what was going on. You like took all the information and maybe you like did an assessment, but you like figured it out without really communicating that much. Where like herbalism is all about like, well, how do you feel? And what's this like? Tell me what's going on. It's like communication felt like an afterthought in medicine, and it's like the most important thing in herbalism. It's like people don't like need to be treated, you know, like if people want treatment, great. If they don't, it's fine. But there's so much like pushing treatment on people in Western medicine that's like, oh, these people are not being compliant. They need to be, you know, you need to like kind of convince them. And it's like really coercive. And a lot of the, what we learned, and this is like 10 years ago almost now that I was in nursing school, but back then in Pittsburgh, at least my teachers were teaching that, if somebody was taking herbs, like your job as the nurse was to try to like help the doctor convince them to just stop taking everything because of whatever side effects it might have or interactions it might have with like the pills and the shots that we were going to give them in the hospital. Like, you know, like that's the best thing you can do is just like get them to stop taking their herbs. It's like,
but don't herbs, I mean, I don't know that much about herbs, but I would assume that they have less side effects than medicine.
Generally, like given in like, you know, safe, sane ways, like not buying like crazy concentrations of anything, you know, working with people that know what they're doing, not just like buying stuff like supplements off the internet, can sometimes be a little dangerous. But besides that, like, I mean, like, I don't know, when is the last time a cup of tea like inadvertently killed anyone?
I don't know if I've ever heard of that happening.
Right, exactly. Like, unless there's like some other weird thing, but you know, like it is a joke, but it's also like it's just true. Like that's herbal medicine is like drinking a cup of tea, and if you don't like tea, there's like all these other ways. You could like take a bath. You could take a tincture. You could drink some honey. You could put a salve on yourself. Like it's all very like soft stuff. It's not like pushing an IV of something like directly into your veins. You know, it's like, okay, we're going to try this and see how you feel and like put this leaf on your wound. Like it's very gentle, but it is effective.
It's interesting, like going back like to my frame of reference in like the doula world, we also worked a lot with like midwives. And when we worked with the midwives, even though they go through nursing school and they go through midwife school, and that's like in like a Western context, but they still have this like much softer like orientation toward the process. And it's funny because when I would work with like at the hospital, they would be like, oh, we need to get this process going. We need to give you an IV with Pitocin. And then when I was at the midwife center, they would like turn to the partner and they would be like, you know, what's really great to get things moving is orgasm and nipple stimulation. And so we're going to just close the door and you guys, I think that you should, help her out, and it was like, instead of an IV with like medicine with tons of side effects, they're like, how about, and midwives always say like the way you get a baby in is the same way you get a baby out. You have to be open. So like, let's figure out how to get you like open, and I think that those more like naturalistic ways of going about things is just not only like different in practice, but it's also totally different in philosophy. When We're Not Hustling is powered by Black Venom Digital. Black Venom Digital is a collaboration between myself and industry veteran Mr. Black Venom. Black Venom Digital aims to provide adult professionals and entrepreneurs with professional-grade web design, graphic design, and branding services that will inspire growth and success. At Black Venom Digital, we empower companions, creators, and entertainers with professional web design and branding. If you're looking for a new website or any other branding services and you work in the adult industry, please find out more at blackvenomdigital.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcast. Doing so will help others find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send us an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
Totally. It's so funny too, because it's like, I guess a lot of things in society are like this, where we like think that like complicating stuff is going to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now we're like in this point of our society where like we actually can't make it much more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And in recent history, since we have complicated, like specifically the birthing process so much, maternal mortality is like increasing and outcomes are like getting worse. So it's like, okay, now we have to like U-turn, like decomplicate. Let's make it simpler.
I love this notion actually of decomplicating things. Like I haven't heard somebody use that word before, but it's a good word. And I think like decomplicating a lot, we could decomplicate a lot of things in our lives.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like part of the, people want to feel like they're being effective and they're being helpful and they want to do the right thing. And they feel like if they don't do something that's like really hard, they're not doing enough. And it's like, no, bud, just sit there. That would be great. Because you just like sit there and like hold somebody's hand. That'd be much better than like pushing a drug right now. Just hold it.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of like the things that you learned when you were doing like herbalism that you didn't know about before that were like, this is a great thing I wish I knew about that, like what's some common things that you think would be helpful for people to know?
I have a few things I feel like I'm proselytizing on commonly. The power of like foot baths and bathing, I think is just like so transformative, and I think it's so underrated. Like when like people have so many foot problems in our society, and people don't like people touching their feet, but people have like neurosis from diabetes or just they don't have great circulation in their feet. Maybe like a lot of people that don't walk around enough have these problems where there's like blood stuck in their feet and their feet hurt and they can't get everything moving. Just putting your feet in like a dish bin with warm water and Epsom salt is like, it like brings up your mood. If you have a headache, it's great. I like to get a full bath of this stuff. Like if I'm on my period or if I just don't feel right or anytime I'm sick, like that's kind of one of like my go-to things is like getting in a warm bath of Epsom salt and like, dehydration, headaches, any sort of muscle pain, like, times when you're like, I really want to get a massage, but I don't have the money, like get in a bath with Epsom salt. Like you can get it for like $1 at Family Dollar,
my partner PJ does this every day. But they have very, very flat feet. Like they could not be flatter. And when they were born with their feet, they had club feet, like they were born with them out and then they got corrected to moving forward. And so, which like, it's funny because their parents like called them thumper when they were little because they had casts on their feet that they would like hit their crib with,
Yeah, my dad had this too.
Your dad did? Yeah. And I don't know about your dad, but like PJ has a lot of like, intense pain in their feet, like all the time.
Oh, my dad does too.
Yeah.
This is the
And
opposite. They're like super arched, like intense
oh,
arched. So
okay. So PJs are, and it's considered like a hypermobility because like, they can't hold their, it doesn't hold shape. It just kind of like goes down. So they sit in the bath at least 3 times a day, like when they get up in the morning and that like when they come home and usually before they go to bed, but they don't always fill the whole bath up. Often it's just a foot or something, because they're just sitting there and mostly it's to soak their feet because their feet hurt. And so that's like such a the way that they just manage their life is like through soaking their feet several times a day.
I love that so much. I love
Yeah.
that you found that because it's so much cheaper than like buying all the like fancy muscle creams or like taking,
Mhm.
endless anti-inflammatories or
Mhm.
like steroids, like it's so good. It's so
Yeah,
good.
we have like a Costco sized bag of like Epsom salt that's in our bathroom all the time.
Yeah. It's really not that expensive, especially if you're willing to like put out the like 20 or $30 for the really big bag. Like
Yeah. I
it's
never even think to do that because I don't take as many baths, but I should probably, but they're always in the bath. So that's like, we have like an endless argument about, I'm ready. Every time I go into the bathroom to take a shower, they're like sitting in the bath. I'm like, really? Every time?
I mean,
And
it's
there are other showers in the house, but it's like, oh, okay. All right. I'm going to reroute my plan.
right, yeah, you gotta like reserve a spot.
Yeah, it's a thing, which is funny because that our son like gets in and out of the bath all day too.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Never thought that before.
he does it when he's bored, but he like his for the listeners, we have like a big room that has a bathroom in it that's his room, and every time he gets bored, you hear the water running, and he's like in the bathtub. He's little too. He gives himself baths.
Yeah, he's the best. He'll be like some sort of like master bath drawer when
Yeah.
he's
So you were working, so that was one thing. You said that's one thing you're proselytizing. What else are you proselytizing?
what else?
You brought me firewater. What's fire when I
Oh,
was sick? And that was actually, I got better. So what is that?
great. Yeah, I forgot to ask you about that. I'm glad that it worked. It's again like super easy. It's a great thing to make in the fall when you have like all the root herbs coming up, like ginger, horseradish, garlic, onions, like all the most like strong flavored what are they called? Aromatics.
Mm-hmm.
Chop them up real small and then put them in a jar, cover in that jar with apple cider vinegar
Mm.
or whatever vinegar you like. I think apple cider vinegar is like the least strong because
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna let it sit for 6 weeks and then you're gonna strain out the solid material and then what you have left over is fire cider. And so it's like a spicy, pungent, sour, garlic flavored vinegar. So it's
Mm.
so intense,
Mm-hmm.
but you only need like a tablespoon of it, and it kind of just gets your entire immune system going. Um, Kind of like the same way that when you eat something sour, your mouth is
Mm-hmm.
watering and you're like, kind of ready to like eat another gummy worm or whatever it is that's
Mm-hmm.
sour. It kind of the fire cider does that to your whole body and just gets like all the fluids going and gets the hormones doing what they're supposed to be doing and yeah, just get your immune system woken up. It's great to do on a weekly basis or when you're feeling like you might get sick, but I definitely am one to just like wait until I'm actually sick and then
Yeah, and then do it. Yeah,
but
PJ's family is Croatian, and in that culture, they often do shots of apple cider vinegar.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, just to like keep your immune system going or whatever. It's like
Yeah,
not uncommon to do a shot of apple cider vinegar.
nice, nice. Because it's also just the apple cider vinegar itself is like pH balancing your whole system. So
Yeah, it's interesting. So during COVID, I remember you were working at a farm in downtown. Like, what was going on there?
So while I was doing my apprenticeship, I was also working in the city at a produce farm, and it was really rad. We had probably 15 around 15 different types of produce, a lot of greens. We had okra, kale, head lettuce, tomatoes, peppers, multiple types of peppers, eggplants, and then also a bunch of medicinal herbs. And
Mhm.
so I would go out there like once a week with my roommate who kind of like roped me into it. And it's perfect. So like, what else am I doing? So I started going out once or twice a week and watering. And then like halfway through the season, they started having a farmer's market. So I was running that. And now I'm like forever in love with farmers markets because I think they're just like really magical places where, I mean, people talk shit. I didn't know there was people talking shit on farmers markets, but they're
Why?
magical.
Why? What is what's the problem with the farmers market?
It's like men on the internet are sometimes haters, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
They,
I've
they're-
seen that.
yes, like what is this? My current roommate sent me all these screenshots of people on Twitter saying how like, oh, I love how, you know, farmers market produce is more expensive than the stuff at the store. It's like you take out the middleman and now it's more expensive. And then something else about like people go to farmers markets because they only want to be around other people that can afford expensive produce. And I'm like,
Oh, okay.
guys, like local organic produce is like not something to be mad at. Like,
Yeah. Mhm.
let's be cool here. And just side note, part of why organic local produce is generally more expensive, even at the farmer's market, is that it is more labor intensive and they're
Mhm.
growing it on a much smaller scale. When you have one giant tractor
Mhm.
that plows, you know, hundreds of acres at one time by like pushing a few buttons on a computer,
Mhm.
that's way less laborers than it takes to like organically grow a field of vegetables with your hands. You
Yeah.
pay people more when they're doing things with their hands. So,
Right.
and usually the smaller
Mhm.
farms are not getting as much of the subsidies, and that might be controversial. I'm not sure. That's something that I would assume as well. Like they're not getting as much like loans for equipment or like
Right.
loans for like supplies. So
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to what would you say to some of that? Like what would you say to people who are like it doesn't seem like there's a reason to buy that? Like what are the environmental or social or health reasons to focus on like the organic like locally farmed stuff?
it's I think it's like hard to argue that there's like anything more important in like humanity right now is like how we're going to feed ourselves as we like continue in
Mhm.
growing population and as like, you know, cheap fossil fuels become less and less common and like all those prices of everything goes up.
Mhm.
Having a farm that can grow nutritious food near you cuts way down on those fuel costs, but
Mhm.
also if they are being kind to the soil and not just taking and like replacing what they're taking and actually going further by
Mhm.
putting more than they're taking away, they are kind of, it's like, I don't know, like what do people say? Like it's like an insurance policy for our like municipality, you know, like
Mhm.
especially in Pittsburgh where like erosion is like such a real thing. You
Mhm.
know, like the houses falling down hills is like a yearly, multiple
Yeah.
time a year occurrence.
Mhm.
Like it's not a fake thing. Maintaining the soil integrity is like it's up
Mm.
there, you know,
Yeah.
like crazier storms as we get hotter weather, as we
Yeah.
cut down more trees, like you know, when we take the soil and the nutrients out of the soil, like, and they end up in the ocean and acidify
Mhm.
the ocean, like that doesn't help us in Pittsburgh, you know, like doesn't help us like wherever we live.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Even
I mean that's really I think that that's really important and interesting like how and I guess it leads into the next thing that I'm wondering is like what have you seen in the time that you've been farming and studying this stuff because it seems to me anecdotally that global warming has been obvious in the last 10 years. Like, I've lived in Pittsburgh for 18 years. And when I moved here, winters were very cold and winters are not very cold anymore. And part of that is me adjusting to Pittsburgh from California, but I don't think that's not the whole story. And I'm wondering, like, what kind of impact you see that it's been having so far, and what do you see happening? Or what do you think is going to happen?
Well, here's another story. So after I worked at that garden, I had like my own little community garden on my friend's land. It used to be his grandma's house. And then I wasn't really clear on the story, but like the house got demolished. And he was like, yeah, I'm not using the land, so you can have a community garden. And this was in not, it's like one of the neighborhoods that's like, statistically like not doing well in Pittsburgh, as far as like abandoned houses and crime and all of those things. So, I had a lot to learn about like, like not everybody wants a community garden in their neighborhood. It's like, there's like nothing better. Like, how could you not want this? But I definitely had
what was the reason for not wanting one?
I think people just don't know, and I probably could have been more forthright with like introducing myself to people, and like I tried to, like, as I saw them, I didn't really want to knock on people's doors, but like looking back on it, I think that would have been great to be like, hey, I'm going to do this. It's going to look like this. If that's like not cool for you, like let me know what I can do to make it better. Because like the adjoining property, the guy would come talk to me, but then also the neighbors were like, oh yeah, he complains about you all the time, and he's definitely calling the city on you.
Oh.
So I'm like, sick. And then like they told me that like the police came one time because somebody called and told them that there was like a homeless lady building a house, and I'm like,
wait,
no.
Was that supposed to be you? You were the homeless lady? Okay.
It's like, I had like a deer fence. It's like just like a net. Like I didn't have like any like wood. I didn't even have like hookups to water. Like I was like bare bones out there. Like that was not a house. Like there's not even a tree on this property. Like I'm out there, And the city, unfortunately, it's just kind of like in their procedure to, I think it's like a common thing in North America that's like, if there are plants on a property that are higher than a certain amount of inches, like you will get a citation.
Okay.
So like, I had like my vegetable garden, but it was like, I had like wood chips around it, but then I was like flanked by just like grasses and native wildflowers and like, kind of like I could see how people were like, oh, it doesn't look very well kept, but like there's a fence, there's tomato plants, like there's somebody growing stuff here. Like I'm there all the time. They cut my entire garden down twice. And
oh my gosh, that must have felt devastating.
Oh my gosh, it was insane. I almost fought them with a shovel at one point. They did it once, and I was like, oh my God, like they cut it down to like less than a centimeter. Like they're basically like down to the dirt. Like there was nothing left. There was no like,
Oh
but
my
I can like salvage the roots, like totally dead. And I think they spray too, so that's crazy. But the one time they came back with all their materials, and I'm like, well, I'm here, so I don't know what you're going to do. And they're like, well, we have to cut from this line. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to start digging up my plants and move them over to this line. And it was just the most, like, only during the pandemic could something like this occur.
But you think because like people just had nothing to do, they were just watching you?
100%. And then like I had nothing to do too. So like otherwise I wouldn't be out, carrying. I didn't have a car at the time. Like I'm carrying bags of dirt on the bus like a fucking like wild. I see why they might have thought like the energy is wild, but there was no house being built. Okay, the insanity was there, so I can see. But
yeah.
But it was just like, okay, so like I just get like I'm like Mercury and Virgo, very logical brain, and when stuff like that happens, I'm like, like this is a neighborhood where there's like every other house, and that's not true, but like many houses in that neighborhood are abandoned. And like they have no grocery stores, no laundromats, like a few corner stores is like all they have in the neighborhood. They're like cut off from like the main like thoroughfare of like there's like a Target not that far, but you have to like go on this like weird windy road to get there, even though like proximity wise, it's not that far. Like they're so cut off.
Yeah.
So like, having tomatoes for free, because that's what like I eventually did have a little harvest. I had corn, I had
Mm.
potatoes, I had herbs, I had jalapenos, a few other things, and I just like I would go and harvest like as people would walk by. I'd be like, hey, I have this like bag of tomatoes. Like take whatever you want. I have
Mhm.
this herb. Like I could tell you about it if you're interested, and just give stuff away. And to me, like the city doing anything but like supporting that even in a menial way is like crazy to me, but for them to like prefer to have absolutely no vegetation, and like they would cut everything down and then just like leave the trash. There would be like trash like stuck in the grass, and they would just like leave that. Like that was better than like having a tomato plant. And I'm like,
That is
whoa,
so weird.
this is
Like,
like the world we live in.
what do you like? That is so mind boggling to me that I can't even figure out like what the motivation is. Like, what is the motivation for that?
Control. Because like I actually have the East Land managers like contact now, and we'll like randomly like for a few years after that we would like text each other about random stuff. I mean not random stuff like about land in the East.
Yeah.
It would be like at random times I'd be like, oh, I have this idea, and he'd be like, that's never gonna happen, and I'm like, whatever. But we had this like, because I almost like physically fought him, and then you know, it's funny because this is how like kind of like sex work is invaluable, because like I think if I hadn't been already like stripping for 5 years, I would have been like afraid of him and been like,
Mhm, mhm.
oh no, like the scary time with the tools is coming, like, and like not that I'm like a meek person, but like they have this like this way about them that they're gonna like arrest you for like growing tomatoes or something,
Mhm.
you know. But I was like, no, this guy, like I can see what this guy, like I'm like reading him as if he's like a client. I'm not scared of you. And I think he could see me like reading him, and he was a little bit
Mhm.
like, ooh, like, I can just tell you're into some weird shit. And I'm like, all right, I have the upper hand. Just be quiet. Just shut. Hush. You're done. Um, it's so wild. But
It is funny how sex work does that to you. It was funny because I can't remember what happened, but like somebody came to our door, and I don't think it was one of the political canvassers. I think it was like something else, but now I'm not remembering what it was. And I sold something. I know what it was. I sold a chair on like Facebook
oh,
Marketplace.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
somebody comes over to pick it up, but he's asking all these like ridiculous questions and then trying to bargain. And like, I know he like drove to my house. He's not leaving without the chair. I'm just like, stop it. Like, would you just like do the thing that you said you were going to come here to do? Like, I don't,
No, it's so
and,
hard.
and PJ was like, you're very, I don't know what word they used. They didn't say I was being assertive, but like something like, wow, like you don't even have time for that. And I'm like, no, I do not have time for that. I know that before I did sex work, I would have just been like trying to be nice and like trying
Mhm.
to be liked. And there's something
Yeah,
about dealing with like the volume of people that we deal with that is just like, no, I'm not gonna, no.
right. Because there's like, it's almost like this equal and opposite thing happens where they think they can kind of like almost say the things they don't normally say to people. They can be even
Mhm.
more like pushy or judgy or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like they can do that. And it's like, no, no, no. I've seen this a million times. Like,
Yeah.
no, not going there. There's something you're trying to like bait me into, but like, no.
No, yeah, I don't want to do this. You want the chair, you don't want the chair. I don't know. Like, but I
Yeah.
and then it was, I remember what he said too, because he was like, why are you selling it? And I was like, what does it matter to you? Like,
So,
and, and then I said, it wasn't exactly the right color. So I bought a different one. So I have another one that's the right color. And he was like, is that one set up like this? And I was like, what does it matter to you? I'm not selling it. Like, can you just buy the chair and go on your way?
yeah.
So,
It's like the same energy as like, is that your real name? Well,
yeah.
why did you change it? What do you like about it? I'm like, what? Mm, mm, mm. Can I just, if I guess the right letter, will you tell me? No. Mm. Anyway, sorry, aside, but I think the reason is like the over complication of land management and like the need for like the masculine principle to control. Like
Mhm.
people want to see a right angle. People want to see a flat surface. People want to see a shape they can understand. Nature
Yeah.
doesn't make those shapes. Like it just,
Yeah.
like when you just let a thing grow, like, oh, it's going to attract animals. Like I had so many people tell me like so many people, but I heard it several times where people were like, well, aren't you going to attract deer? And aren't you scared that they might attack someone? And I'm like,
A deer?
there's already deer all over the city, number one.
Yeah,
We're not
right.
attracting any new ones. Number two, they're not attacking anybody. Like, God
No.
forbid they have like a place to sleep. Like, oh, they might lay in the grass. Like, oh, we gotta call the city.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. If a deer's ever attacked somebody, it's like because they're like being awkward. Like they're not doing it on purpose. Like,
Yeah, I have a female deer that lives in my yard that's been living in my yard for before we bought the house because the house was vacant for 2 years before we bought it, and it had its babies there like in the little side yard. And so now every single year she comes back and has her babies there, and when I go to get in my car, especially in like the spring when she has her little like nest there, like I'll walk out to my car and she's sitting there and she looks at me and I look at her and then we go about our business. As far as I'm concerned, she was there first. Like we moved into her like,
right.
area. And she's just like, this is my side of the yard. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
you knock yourself out.
right. Like it's okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in like, okay, so in the South there are some dangerous animals. There's like some crazy like spiders and stuff. But even that, like, people have been living there for hundreds of years, like, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But PA, like, there's especially Western Pennsylvania in the city, like, there's not a lot of dangerous animals. There
No.
just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And like when people like that was like a common like reason of it, like, oh, we don't want the stuff to get too tall because we're going to attract these dangerous animals. Like, there's really not a lot of dangerous animals here to be attracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And the
just
deer are so tame.
yes, and they're so scared. Like, they don't wanna mess with anyone, like, they don't know.
Yeah. In my neighborhood, it's all the housewives who are like upset that their flowers are getting eaten. And so there's like a major concern every single year about the deer.
It's just like a losing battle, and I think that, it's almost, like, addictive because you're never gonna win that. Like, you're never
No.
gonna win that. Like, and I think it happened in most of the US, but it's like we cut down most, if not all, maybe you can't say all, but most of the trees in the state, and then we ruined their habitat, and then we reintroduced them without reintroducing their predator, and that's, a very simplified way of explaining it, but, like, their habitat is messed up, so, like,
Yeah.
they're gonna be, like, perfectly aligned
Yeah.
with what we're doing, like,
Right.
stuff compared to, like, what they're used to for the last thousands of years, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't know what a road is yet.
No. Yeah. So are you not doing that anymore? Is that done?
Um,
That one?
yeah, yeah, I ended up leaving that because I, like, didn't have the words to try to explain, like, what I was trying to do
Mm-hmm.
and, like, the difference between, like, a weed and, like, a medicinal herb.
Mm-hmm.
It just got so frustrating, but,
Yeah.
there was some fun times. I was keeping all my stuff at my friend's house who lived, like, one neighborhood away, and I didn't have a car, so I would, like, walk from her house with whatever tools I was gonna use for the day,
Mm-hmm.
and she had, like, an old-fashioned scythe, like you would see
Oh
in,
my
like
gosh, really?
yeah, like, I've seen, like, films of, like, ancient Macedonia, they're, like, sowing the what is it? Reaping the wheat, like, cutting it
Yeah.
down with these blades, um, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go use this at my garden so they don't cut it down," and so I walked, like, through the hood, like, 2 neighborhoods, probably, like, a mile walk with this scythe with, like, shorts and my hair down, and was just like, "Yeah, if anyone wants to mess with me, you can try. You can do whatever you want. I'm gonna wear what I want because I'm carrying the scythe." It, like,
Yeah.
cancels out the, like, slutty outfit. Well, and I got there and it was all cut down again, and I was like, "You know what? I'm done.
Yeah.
I've
Mhm.
had enough here."
Yeah. I
Um,
hear that. Yeah. So what are your what is your vision for like what you would love to see or what you would love to do if you could?
If I could, I would love to have a little bit of land, but
Mm-hmm.
near people I love.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be like out on my own, roughing it. Like I want to be around folks, and I'd love to have my own in-call space. Just
Oh, me
there,
too.
that needs to be in the plan.
Yeah.
Um, I need chickens. Number one,
Mm.
I did some chicken farming. That was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. Chickens are important, and yeah, like a way to like feed the land. Um, if I can grow stuff and just keep, taking the leaf litter and putting it back in, having a compost pile, maybe having compost toilets, and not even being a part of the like flushing your shit to the sea game. It's like kind of silly, like animals poop in the woods all day, every day, and like it's okay. Like it will
Mm-hmm.
goes. Just side
Mm-hmm.
note. Um, yeah, I'd love to have like a house with some land and people to share it with, and in-call space, and probably some aerial space that I can like hang from cool apparatuses with my friends. And
That sounds like an amazing vision, and I think it's possible. I think it's
cool.
like it's like it sounds amazing, but it also sounds attainable.
Yeah, we could do this.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I think we need more like planning time. Yes.
Yeah, and in my Saturn return, things are shifting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, what are your? So we're putting out this episode. We're recording this at the end of 2024, but we will put it out at the beginning of 2025. And what do you see for your 2025?
I see more traveling, more touring, and getting paid to tour, whether I'm escorting or I'm performing at a cool club near you. And yeah, being in a space like that, moving
Yeah.
towards that space, feeling a little more comfortable and like I have a little more space to breathe, and where I don't get so many parking tickets.
Yeah. Good goals. Those are good goals. Yeah. And we like to end every episode with 3 questions. So, what are you reading?
I am reading the survival guide to my Saturn return. I can't remember who wrote it, but I can like give it to you for the show notes if you want
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I'm 29, so it's the time. Everything is shifting for me. So
Yeah.
moving into adulthood.
You are going to like 30s better, I think.
I think so too.
You have like a very calm personality, and I think that makes sense for like somebody who's like grounded in your farms and in your business and in your stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
And what are you listening to?
I am listening to a book about dreams that my friend Melanie suggested to me, and how it's about how your dreams are worth paying attention to, and it's very woo, but in like the most intellectual way possible, because that's how my friend Melanie is. She's so fucking cool. And it's kind of like you're like recalling your energy from certain times of your life. Like I always have these recurring dreams that I'm in like the house I grew up in, or like when I lived at my last house, I would always have dreams I was in that house, even though I was still sleeping in that house. It was really weird. But there's like some sort of energy trapped in those.
You know, I have most of the dreams that I have. I don't remember a lot of my dreams, but when I do, they're often associated with a house and like windows and doors, like in houses that I've been in. And that stands out so much to me. And I'm always like, and back to like one of the houses that I lived in when I was young too. And like just houses, they seem to like the place that we dwell, like has such a huge impact on our psyche, I think.
Yeah. And the guy that wrote the book, and he's also, I think, the speaker in the audiobook, he explains it like he tells about other people's dreams, but then like his explanation is just like so to the point. Like he'll be like off on like some woo explanation of this like dream where there's like a horse and they're like petting the horse, and it's like you feel like you're taking mushrooms or something, and then he's like, and this is connected to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, cool, we're balanced, we're like explaining it, but his theory is it's like that setting is very important in your dreams because like energetically, like you've left a little bit of yourself there. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like he doesn't really talk about lucid dreaming. He talks more about just like meditate, close your eyes, put yourself in that house and like invite that energy back to you.
Yeah. Nice. And what are you excited about?
I am excited to go back to New Orleans sometime soon.
Yeah, you go down there and dance for long stretches of time, huh?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like part of my energy is forever there.
Forever there. Yeah. Where can people find you?
I'm on Tumblr. I'm at Sheena is a punk stripper with 2 R's.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah, they wouldn't let me write stripper, so I got rid of the E and put 2 R's.
Nice. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jessie. This was so fun.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. You can follow the show on all socials at Not Hustling Pod and visit our website for more information at nothustling.com. The show is produced by Emily Foster. The music is by Benjamin J. Benemady. Signing off. Have a great week.